Welcome to the Adoption Side by Side podcast, because no one should have to walk the adoption journey alone. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Steph. We walk the journey together, and we want to walk it with you if you'll have us.
All right, welcome today, everyone. We have back today previous guest, Bree, who was our consultant with Journey Adoption Consultants. Today, Bree is here to document her personal adoption story for her daughter and son. And we're going to talk about a topic that I know was very much on my mind when we were first beginning the adoption process, which is what happens when you are, say, matched with an expectant mom, and either before the baby is born or even after the baby is born, the expectant mom might change her mind. It's considered is a disrupted adoption the correct terminology for that?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit today about navigating that emotional roller coaster and all those pieces. So welcome back, Bree. We appreciate you giving us your time again.
Yes. Thank you guys for having me. I'm very excited. So I'm going to start off by just sharing my personal story and the journey that has led me to adoption. And then we'll talk a little bit about what a disrupted adoption looks like and those emotions and all that Andrea talked about.
Sounds great.
So in 2018, we started the adoption process. My husband and I are high school sweethearts. We actually met in church when we were the age of middle school. We didn't go to the same middle school, but we actually went to the same high school. And so we met in middle school at church and started dating when we were 16 years old. And I quickly knew he was the one that the Lord had planned for me. And so, of course, I was always praying about my future and what God had in store. And every time I prayed about marriage and children, the Lord just truly was placing adoption on my heart at a very young age. So when we got married, we talked about it. We talked about it as teenagers, but also when we got married. And I just always felt the Lord calling me to adopt. And so we shared those same desires and wants. And so he was all for it. And when we talked about having kids, I just truly felt that the Lord just wanted me to start my family by adoption. And so in 2018, we started the process and we were super excited. And we started the process in March. And we became active at the beginning of June. So it really didn't take us a long time to get through the home study and the profile book. And then we became active at the very beginning of June. And within 2 weeks of becoming active, I got a situation. And it was the craziest situation I'd ever seen till, honestly, to this day. I was in the middle of working and I got a text message and my phone came up with a case and it said, super quick case, deadline 30 minutes. And wow. I've never seen anything like that before. And I had 30 minutes to respond. And all it said was African-American baby girl, already born, healthy, no drugs, no alcohol. And that was it. Literally that was it. And so I was like, whoa, this is very vague, but very awesome. And it was the craziest thing. I had the most overwhelming peace from the Lord when I read that. And so I stepped away and I was like, I need to call my husband. So I called my husband and I was like, what do you think, babe? And he was like, let's do it. Let's say yes. And I was like, okay. So I immediately responded and I was like, yes. And that was it. And so it was, but I cannot even describe to you the most overwhelming peace I had during that moment. But then, honestly, for a week and a half after that, it was crickets. I did not hear anything. It was the craziest thing ever. So I assumed, birth mom had chosen someone else because right. I was like, the baby's already born. Right. I don't know anything. I don't know when she was born, but I know that, the baby was healthy. And so at that point I was like, birth mom has selected someone else. And so we just kept navigating the process, waiting for another case. And then one Wednesday morning, I went to the dentist and I was driving home and I got a phone call the best phone call of my life that I've ever received, but I was completely shocked and I answered it and they're like, "Hey Bree, how are you?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm great." And I'm driving home from the dentist. How are you? And they said, "Oh, we're great." They said, "We just want to let you know that birth mom selected you guys." And I was like, "What?" I was just so shocked. So shocked I had to pull over because I was in the middle of driving and I could not function. And so anyway, long story short, that was on a Wednesday and I was like, "Okay, when can I come get her?" And they said, "Sometime this weekend." And I was like, "No, I want to go tonight."
Right,
And
yeah.
like, Bree, it takes a while. We got to get paperwork. She's already born, all this. So anyway, I pushed for the earliest day possible. And so I got to pick Stella up on Saturday, June 30th. And it was amazing. She was 19 days old the day we got to meet her, and she was just perfection. And it was amazing. And so I often describe it as rainbows and butterflies because it was just so easy. It just was all the Lord. I checked every box. I was like, "Lord, you called me to adopt at a young age. I want this to be all you. So whatever you want, I want it to be you." And so the Lord gave me a 30-minute time case. He gave me a beautiful baby girl that was already born. She, when I got to meet her, she was 19 days old and she was absolutely perfection and perfect. And her birth family is incredible. We have an awesome open adoption with them. And I'm just so thankful for him. And so for us, it was wonderful. And so, of course, as your children get older, you have a desire sometimes to have another one or grow it through adoption. And so after Stella was about one, we decided, we were like, I really wanted to adopt another one. As I've said before, Stella was African American. And so I really wanted her to have a sibling that had color of some sort that looked like her, so she would not be the only one in the house. And so we had talked about, do we want to grow our family through adoption or do we want to have any of our own? And so we just decided when she was about a year, we were like, let's try to adopt again. And so the second time around, I was like, I don't care, Lord, what it is, but just give us a child that looks like her of some way. And so we just wanted that for her, and so that was our desire, but we also wanted it to be whatever God wanted. And so we actually started the process again in 2020 during the pandemic. And so, of course, as everyone in the world knows, we didn't know what was happening in the world, and it was different and crazy. And but we felt that it was okay to start the process again. And so I started the process again, and the Lord matched us with a expectant mom that lived in Florida. And it was great. She was amazing. We actually had an opportunity to go down to Florida and meet her. And Corey and Stella came with me, and we got to all meet her. We took her to dinner, and it was just a great time of fellowship. And so things were going well. The baby girl was supposed to be born in April of 2020. And we just continued to build a relationship while she was pregnant. We texted, like I said, we came and visited her. And when April came around, we were just kind of on hold of, okay, we got a bag packed, we're ready. Whenever you go into labor, like, let us know. And so she was due near the end of April, around April 20th or somewhere around there. And so, as the weeks came on in April, I would just check in. Hey, just checking in on you. How are you feeling? We've got the bag packed. And she would just say, we're good. Well, I'm just waiting. I'm waiting. And then near the end of April, when I didn't hear anything, I started to become just a little concerned, okay, like, we're past due date. At this point, you're 41 weeks. Like, what's happening? You're going to have an induction day, what's going on? And so then it became a little silent. And so I didn't hear anything back. And so we contacted the agency, and then they tried to reach out to her, and it was silent. And then finally it came to the point where they reached out and was like, we need to know. You need to let Corey and Bree know this is the life of a child. Like, we need to know whether you're parenting, whether you had the baby or not. Like, please let us know.
Right.
And so she finally responded to them, and she said, I did have the baby girl, but I am not able to place her for adoption. And so at that point, they did, they did let us know. I did not think I would get emotional
It's
about
okay.
this, y'all, but it is the life of a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I did prepare my home.
And your
And
heart.
I prepared my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I prepared my family. So forgive me, I did not think I would cry about that.
You are
But
perfectly fine.
the Lord did protect me and my family in a lot of ways. I never got to meet that baby girl. I don't even know what she looks like. I don't know her name. And I don't know her birth date. But in so many ways, God did protect me of that, because I think it would have been harder for me and Corey and Stella if we would have flown down to Florida and seen her and had to give her up. There are people all over the world that have to do that. That is so, so hard. And so God did protect me in so many ways of that. And I'm very, very thankful. But then there's also that part of you where you're like, gosh, I wish I would have just known what she looks like, or just the day that she was born. I do not know. Birth mom was very silent at that point. She never responded to my text message. I let about a week go by, of course, just trying to process it. And I asked Corey, I said, I feel like I need to just text her and just share my heart. And he was like, I don't know, babe, it's up to you. I don't know if that's the best thing to do. But I just felt like I needed that closure for myself.
Right.
You had been building this beautiful relationship, and then it's just, and there's just silence.
Yeah. So I just felt like I needed that. And honestly, I look back, it's been 5 years, and I'm so thankful I did that. It was very, very kind and genuine. And I just expressed, I said, I heard that you had the baby and that she's healthy. And I just thanked her. I thanked her for, giving me the opportunity to love on her and her family. But I did tell her, I said, for the last few months, I've prepared my heart and my home, and we're very upset that this is not the way we had seen our story. But I did tell her that I would always be there for her, and I would always think of her and pray for her and the baby girl. And I needed that for closure for myself, because having that silence, it was hard to move on. And so she did not respond, but she did have her read receipt on, so I could see that she did read it. It did say read, and the date that she read it. So I had comfort in that I was like, okay, she did read it. She understands. And, that's the part of adoption that I have to always guide my families that I consult with and tell them, like, this is part of the adoption world, is that there is that chance. Any expectant mother has the right to parent or the right to give their child up for adoption. And it's just their right. And, so I had to move on and understand that baby was just not meant for my family. But that's hard to accept. It's really, really hard to accept. But that's what I have to tell my families, while it's not ideal and it's hard and gut-wrenching, but God does prepare the perfect child for your family. And as you guys know that with your sons, like, God prepares the perfect child for your family. And until you have that baby, you don't know that. And so I had to send that text message for closure. Of course, I do think about her, but I'm often just reminded that the Lord's plans for us are better than I can ever understand. I never thought I would be that person that walks through that disrupted adoption. Not that I think I'm, better than anyone else. It was just, I'm in this world as an adoptive mom. I'm in this world as a professional. Like, surely I could figure out if a mom wasn't going to place their child for adoption, or, I just didn't think I would ever walk through that journey. But I am here 5 years later to say the Lord did allow that to happen to me to better serve my families. We don't have a lot of disrupted adoptions at Journey, and I'm so thankful for that. But I've had a few, and I've had a few families that have walked that journey. And I just feel like the Lord has given me the right words to help those families. you can show someone a whole lot more grace when you've walked that journey and you understand the pain and the heartache. And I just feel like, here I am 5 years later and I'm helping families. And if anyone does walk that journey, I just feel like I'm able to serve them a little better, whether I hadn't gone through that or not.
Right.
And so, of course, when you walk through that journey, there's heartache, there's pain. And so you don't know, do I want to move on? And there was one point at my life that I was like, I have a beautiful baby girl that's perfect and healthy. Like, I'm okay with just one. I was like, I have Stella and she's perfect. And so I really took some time to just rethink, regroup, pray about it. And of course, we still wanted to grow our family. My husband was like, let's just keep trying, Brie. Like, God has a baby out there for us, And so we decided to start. We took some time off and then we decided to start again. And we actually rematched exactly 9 months after the disrupted adoption. So baby girl was born in April, and then we matched exactly 9 months later. And so this second time around, it was actually a baby boy. And so we matched with him, and he was going to be due in January of 2021. Okay. So, we were still navigating that COVID year. Things were different. Adoption was kind of slow. It would ebb and flow. And so when we did rematch, we had a couple months to prepare, and it was a baby boy, and we were so excited. And this one was just kind of similar to Stella's. It was just easy, no red flags. It was just a great situation. And so that expectant mom was in Texas. And so we knew we were going to have to travel over to Texas. At that point, we lived in Georgia. And so we knew we were going to have to fly to Texas. And the baby boy was going to be due January 20th of 2021. And so we had planned after Christmas, okay, we'll get everything together. Family was buying baby boy stuff. We were trying to re-prep and regroup, like, we're about to have a boy, like, we're used to all this girly stuff. We got to get some boy stuff in our house. And so my parents were buying boy stuff, and, it was just a simple Christmas because it was COVID year. And so it was, small little Christmas, and we, bought things. And long story short, a few days after Christmas, my husband got a phone call, and it was actually on New Year's Eve. And the second time, this time, they decided, hey, we're going to call Corey because this agency knew that we had a disrupted adoption 9 months prior. And so they said, we're going to call Corey this time because we physically cannot call Bree. And so they called Corey, and they let him know that out of nowhere, this expectant mom called them and said, hey, I know I'm not due for 3 weeks, but I'm just not going to be able to place this baby boy for adoption.
Oh, my.
And so we were all taken by surprise. But of course, I think Corey was too, because he received that phone call and he wasn't thinking, like, we saw nothing. It was just a very simple case, no red flags. This relationship wasn't super open. We were there, but it wasn't like lots of communication. It was just, she would go to her appointments, we would get an update, that type of thing. And so it was a lot different than the baby girl. And so we never saw this coming. They would just give us updates, and we're like, okay, we'll be ready in January. Let us know when to travel. So when they called out on New Year's Eve, we were thinking maybe she was going into labor or something. Right. And so Corey was very caught off guard. And so he did not call me. He left work, drove home, and told me on New Year's Eve. He came home from work and let me know the news. And I was distraught. I was like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that this can be happening again. And I just fell to my knees, just sobbing, crying, praying. And I was like, Lord, why? Why, God, did this happen again? Like, there's just no way that this can be happening to me 9 months later. And at that point, I looked at my husband and I said, I think I'm just done. Like, I don't think I can physically do this again. I just don't think I can. And so that was hard. It was still calendar year, same year. It was
Right.
April and then December 31st. And then I had to walk into a new year of just absolute heartache and pain. And all of this during the pandemic, like just a horrible year. And so I was just trying to process it all. And I was like, okay, Lord, I think I'm just going to step back and just take some time off. And I'm just going to not adopt again. And I'm going to focus on my beautiful Stella and just have one, and life is great with her. And I don't have to have another.
Right.
Well, the Lord decided, that wasn't going to happen. So, a couple days later, my mom actually was not feeling well. And so she called me on New Year's Day. She always calls me on New Year's Day and wished me a Happy New Year. She could tell as Mother Instant, no, something wasn't right. And so she was like, Bree, what's wrong? And I had to tell her. My whole family was preparing for this baby boy. He was going to be the first grandson in our family, and my mom, knew the name we were going to pick out and everything. And so she had already bought tons of clothes at Christmas, and so I had to tell her over the phone, and that was not ideal. But I let her know, and my mom was just, as any grandmother would be, just devastated, and she could not even process it, and just crying on the phone, sobbing, and I just was trying to reassure her. I was like, it's okay, Mom, like, don't worry about it. And she was just so upset. And so she tried to come see me a couple of days later. She said, I'm going to come see you. I just want to hold you and hug you. But she wasn't feeling that well. And so she said, I think I just have a sinus infection. I'm going to wait a couple days. And so a couple of days went by, and she tried to come see me, and we lived about an hour and a half away from each other. And so she made it about halfway, and she was like, Bree, something's wrong. I just don't feel well. I'm going to head back. I don't want to get Stella sick. I'm going to head back, and I'll try to come see you in a couple of days. And I said, okay. So I really didn't think anything of it. I just thought, she really wasn't feeling good. And so she went to the doctor, and I could talk hours about this, but long story short, she went to the doctor several times. And on the third visit, the doctor said, you need to go to the hospital. I have found COVID pneumonia on your lungs. And it's really bad. And I need you to head there immediately. And so, of course, weird year, don't know what's going on with COVID. So my dad took my mom to the hospital. And of course, that was a time where no one could enter. You had to drop your family members off at the door. And so my dad dropped my mom off. She entered that hospital by herself, was trying to get treatment and everything like that. And my mom never left the hospital. She was there for 5 weeks. And for the first 2 weeks, she was alert and awake and would text me constantly about that precious baby boy. And she would say, is that baby boy, is that mom going to change her mind? Like, that baby boy could still be yours. She was so concerned about that sweet baby boy because she knew that was supposed to be her grandson. And I would just say, Mom, don't worry about the baby boy. Like, I need my mom right now. Like, just take care of yourself, and I called the hospital 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And I would advocate for my mom on the phone because there was nothing else I could do but call and get updates and recommend things. And, I wanted anything in the world to be there with her, but I wasn't allowed. And so I advocated for her, and she would just constantly send me encouraging things and letting me know that she was praying for me and the baby and all this stuff. But on my end, I was just like, I just want my mom. I wasn't even concerned at that point because all I wanted was my mom to get better. And so on January 20th, when the baby was due, I got a phone call from the hospital, and they let me know that my mom's oxygen levels had dropped so low in the middle of the night that they had to transport my mom to a different hospital in downtown Birmingham, and that they had to put her in ICU and put her on a ventilator. And at that point, my world crumbled because in my mind, I said, okay, Lord, you're making things very clear to me, because the day that that baby was supposed to be born, my mom got put in ICU and got put on a ventilator. And I knew at that point I couldn't be in the state of Texas caring for a newborn,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom be in Birmingham, Alabama, in intensive care on a ventilator. And so I didn't know that back on New Year's Eve when I got the call. But 3 weeks later, I knew, okay, Lord, this is part of the story. I can't be at two places at once. And you allowed that adoption to fail because I couldn't possibly take care of a baby boy while my mom was in ICU, and you don't know that when the time happened. But 3 weeks later I did, and I knew. I said, okay, God, you're writing this story, and I can see it all now. And so at that point, adoption was just like, I was like, I'm done as far as my family. You know what I mean? Like, God's built my family. I can't go through that again. My mom's in ICU. And so I put everything on hold and just really just focused on her. And I was doing everything I can to get her the care she needed. And honestly, at that point, and I'm open and honest about this to everyone, like, I really did tell my husband, like, I have no plans to adopt again. I cannot do this. And I don't know what my life is going to look like in the future with my mom. And I'm just going to be a family of 3. But God did not see that in store for my family. He said, nope, you're not going to be a family of 3, Bree. And so a few weeks later, on February 11th, my phone rang, and it was about 7:30 in the morning. And it was from the hospital. And so I picked it up and thought, I just thought I was getting good news, but I was not. They called me to tell me that my mom had took a turn for the worse in the middle of the night, and that things were not looking good, and that I needed to head there quickly. And I was on the phone, and I said, look, I'm about 2 hours away. I said, and she said, I know, but you need to hurry. And so I begged that nurse. I said, whatever you do, just keep my mama alive until I get there. And she said, I'm going to try, but you got to hurry. So I drove so fast, and I don't even remember driving, because as you can imagine, driving 2 hours to know that your mom might be dying. I drove so fast, and I got there, and I ran through the hospital, and it was COVID. So, like, there was all these security precautions, and I was like, I just need to see my mom. And my sweet daddy was waiting for me. And we had to suit up, everything from head to toe, mittens, gloves, shoes, everything, hat, hairnet. And they said, at this point, there's just nothing we can do. And I begged that doctor. I said, nothing. And he said, Brie, I'm so sorry. But he said, she's been here for weeks, and, like, her lungs are just still covered in COVID pneumonia. And so my dad and I got to go see my mom, and within a few hours, she passed away. And so I'm very thankful that I got to see her. She was on the ventilator, so she wasn't alert or anything like that. But, people have told me that some people can hear, while they're on that. Some people believe that. But I got to spend some time with her, and so did my dad. And a little while after that, she had passed away. And so, of course, as you guys can imagine, my entire world fell apart. And at that point, I knew. I said, okay, God, I see the story that you've written for my family. Adoption the second time around was just not in store for me. And, like, I just lost my mom to a worldwide pandemic. And my mom was young and healthy. She was 57 years old. And she didn't meet the criteria of most COVID patients. So this was very, like, shocking to our family, because, she didn't have the asthma or diabetes or, she's never even had pneumonia in her life. So this was, like, very shocking for our family that someone that young and healthy could get COVID pneumonia and die from it. Like, when she went into that hospital, we really never had any clue that she would never walk away. We just did not even think that when we dropped her off. And so, but it was 5 weeks total. It was long. It was just a lot. And so at that point, we had left the hospital, and a few hours went by, 4 to be exact, and my phone rang, and it was an agency in Texas, and I honestly thought they were calling me for work-related stuff with Journey. So I did pick it up because I wanted to let them know, hey, my mom's passed away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be able to talk today. If you need immediate assistance, I was going to let them know to call Ian at Journey, and she would help them. And they were like, oh my gosh, Bree, your mom just passed away. And I said, yes, I'm so sorry. If you need anything, just call Ian. And they were just like, so just supportive and just like, Bree, I'm so sorry, and what can we do? And I'm just on the phone crying. And they said, this is going to be the craziest phone call of your life. And they said, but there was a baby boy that was born last night, and he is healthy, and we really want you and Corey to consider adopting him. And I was like, boo-hooing. I was like, there is no way I cannot do that. Like, have you lost your mind? I was like, my mom, I am sobbing. I'm like, my mom just died. Like, I am no way am I adopting a baby. And they were like, okay, we'll just call Corey. And I was like, no, like, don't call him. Like, so I'm just sobbing. And so, of course, like, we end the call. And they pick up that phone and they call my husband. And they were like, well, first off, we're so sorry to hear about Bree's mom. And then they said, we know that she cannot fathom this right now.
Right.
But they said, but there is a beautiful African-American little boy that is healthy and needs a home. And like, we really want you guys to consider adopting him. So, of course, Corey's trying to process this because he's like, my wife is over here crying. She just lost her mom. This agency, there's a baby. Like, he was like, can you imagine? Mm-hmm. No, I cannot imagine. Mm-hmm. So he said, okay, let me talk to Bree and I'll call you back. And so we sat down. Still, again, I was like, no, have you lost? Absolutely not. Like, absolutely not. And so we, of course, took some time, and he said, Bree, well, you cannot understand this. This is God's providential timing. This is life and this is death. And we can't fathom what he's doing, and we don't understand, but it is life and death. And he said, most importantly, I know that your mama would absolutely want you to adopt this baby. And your mom was already preparing her heart and her home for a grandson. And then she passes away from a worldwide pandemic, and she would want this more than anything. And he said, maybe God is giving you this third chance at this point of adopting a second child to help you cope through the death of your mom, to help you to get through the hardest storm of your life. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, when he pointed all those things out to me, I said, okay. I said, I'm leaving it into your hands because I was like, I can't even deal with this right now. I had to go to a funeral home and plan things. I was like, I'm leaving it all to you.
You get to do the paperwork.
I was like, you get to do it all. And so he called him back and he said, okay, we want to present. And so they submitted our book along with 4 other families. So we were one of 5. And so I didn't think twice about it. I didn't think about timing. I had no idea what the plan was. All I knew that he was at that point was 1 day old. And so I left it up to Corey. He told him yes. And I went on, grieving and trying to plan a funeral and all that stuff. And so at 9:00 that same night, my mom died at 10 a.m. They called 4 hours later with the case. And at 9 p.m. that night, my phone rang and I picked it up. And all they said was, Bree, she chose y'all. And I was like, what? I mean, I was like, this cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. And they were like, she picked y'all. And I said, you are kidding me. And I was like, I am literally about to throw up right now. Like, this could not be happening. She did. She picked us. And I can't even describe to you. That is all the Lord. And if you do not know Jesus, let me share my story with you, because only the Lord can do that. There is no one else that can do that. And God knew even before I existed that I would have two disrupted adoptions, that I would lose my mom to a worldwide pandemic, but God would bless me on the same day with a beautiful baby boy. And that's a lot. It's a lot to process. It's a lot to go through. I also still had Stella. So at that point she was almost 3. And but God knew even before I existed that was going to be my story. And he knew that was going to be my testimony. Of course, I would do anything to have my precious mom here. And I'm still trying to figure out those pieces. And I tell people all the time, I don't know why that's my story, but God does. And even if I share this story with one person and it allows people to see how great God can be after a hard storm, then maybe that's my story. But God knew. And after all that, when I got my son and I got to hold him, I knew that God sent him for me. In the hardest storm, he got me up. I had to feed him. I had to do all the motherly things. I had a toddler, and God knew, like, I needed that to get up every day to cope of dealing with losing a mom at such a young age. And so I knew. My mom died right after I had her for 30 years, and I turned 31, and then my mom died a week after my birthday. And so for 30 years, I got her, and I thought to myself, that's not a long time. But I'm thankful for the 30 years that God did give her to me. But I wish I had more, of course. But he gave me a son and a daughter and 2 disrupted adoptions. But God knew that I needed Stella, and he knew that I needed Ollie. And let me tell you, my sweet Ollie, he is my sunshine every day. His little personality, he makes everyone laugh and he makes everyone smile. He's just so fun. And so I tell people, God knew that he was meant for my family, but he is my constant smile and happiness, even to my dad, who was, grieving losing his wife of 36 years. And you can imagine when I had to tell my dad, hey, I know mom just passed away, but I'm about to get this baby and I got to go to Houston, Texas. He was like deer in headlights. What? And I said, I don't understand, Dad. And I said, but God does. And, this is what the Lord has for our family. And I'm going to go get that baby. And so my dad was actually the first person in our immediate family that got to meet Ollie. And you can imagine what his emotion is that, he doesn't have his wife to see this moment. But I just kept praying that Ollie and my dad would just be the best of buds, and maybe Ollie would be a comfort to him as well. And 4.5 years later, they are thick as thieves. They are 2 peas in a pod. And my dad is truly one of my son's favorite people on this earth. And I'm so thankful. So I look at that a lot and say, not only was he meant for me and my husband and Stella, but he was also meant for my dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
They love each other so much and are so close. And Ollie truly has helped us get through hard moments and moments where we didn't want to get out of bed, but we did. And he helped me get through those tough times. And I'm so thankful, so thankful. And so we don't always understand the story that God has for us, but sometimes, I can say 4.5 years later, after adopting my son, that he was meant for me because of that hard storm in my life of 2 failed adoptions and losing my mom to COVID. He was meant for me. God knew that I needed that boy to keep me going, and he still keeps me going every day. And he is the perfect brother for my Stella. Like, those 2 are meant to be brother and sister, and they love each other so much. They share no DNA, but they are absolutely perfect forever. And that's so incredible to see God just orchestrate all that, that they each have a sibling now, and they're just meant to be. God knew that even before I was even born. And so I'm so thankful. And so it was a hard storm, but in the end, God has brought so much sunshine and joy from it. And so forgive me, y'all, for being emotional
okay.
because
No,
I did
you're
not think I
perfectly
would. But
fine.
wow, when you talk about it
Mhm.
and you have to share it, you really, it was just a hard journey. It was a hard journey and it was a lot, but God has brought me through it. And I'm so, so thankful for the family that the Lord has given me.
It's a beautiful journey that you're able to share with us, our listeners, and then those in your life as well as being a consultant, because disrupted adoptions are one area that I think we all dread when we say we want to adopt, and we start it because we know the emotional toll that it will take on not only us, but our friends and family, even though, you consult and everybody says, only share so much about cases and what should you tell when you do match, because like you said, when you had to call and tell your mom that you had disrupted again, it broke her. And
Yes.
I mean, I know that slightly from just a phone call we were supposed to have with a expectant mom, having to call and tell my mom that, like, it's emotional. So God's definitely using your story to help us and others to prepare as much as one can for those storms that do come our way. So thank you for sharing.
Yes, absolutely. And another thing is the financial loss. With every disrupted adoption, there is an at risk. And that's what I tell my families a lot is the big word you want to look for is at risk. What is at risk if you say yes to this situation and the expectant mom does change her mind?
Right.
And it can be thousands of dollars. It really can be. And I will say with my first disrupted adoption with the baby girl, we lost thousands and thousands. And I was just not okay with that, of course. Who is? I didn't have any of the extra money to put towards another adoption. So that was a big thing for me is I was like, I just lost thousands of dollars. I don't have a baby in my home. How do I pick up and move on?
Right.
And I think that's probably the question for every single person that has ever gone through a disrupted adoption. How do I pick up and move on? I just lost all this money. But I will say if I can do it, anyone can do it because I didn't have the extra money to move on by any means. But we just continued. What I decided to do was be open and honest with people because we fundraised a lot. So then I felt like I needed to let them know. And so I actually did a video. My husband and I did a lot of videos about our journey along the way. But once we did find out that it truly did, fail, we decided to do a video. And he was like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And I was like, "Yes." And it was, I mean, I cried like majorly on the video. But I wanted to be open and honest and let people know, like, this was not planned. We never saw this coming.
Sure.
Yes, I raised a lot of money through fundraising, and unfortunately, I lost it all. But if I ever want to adopt again, I'm going to have to raise more money, and that's the last thing I want to do. But we did. We actually, I was just open and honest and said what I needed, how much I had lost, and how short I was to be able to adopt again. And I thought of different fundraisers, and I just told people, if you want to support and be a part of the fundraiser, let me know. And we applied for loans and grants, and I did everything I could to just kind of recoup the money. And so it was hard. It was very hard, but the Lord provided, and people supported our fundraisers and they donated. I did get one grant for the disrupted adoption. And so it was just like I put everything I had into it to kind of recoup the funds. And so I would say that's probably the hardest thing for people is to move on because of the money aspect. But even when we were short, we just took out a loan. And I tell people it's okay if you have to do that because my children are now 7 and 4 and my loan is paid back. So it's not like you have that on you forever.
Right.
You can make those monthly payments and get it paid off. And we did. So even if you have to take one out, it's okay. And then my mom often shared with me, like, there are people in the world that want to bless other people.
Absolutely.
So don't block the blessings that people want to give you. And so I really just took that to heart and just opened up the different fundraisers and things. And then I was like, if people want to support, they want to support. And, people really did step up. I would not have my 2 children today if it wasn't for my village and my family and friends that supported us through all those years of fundraising and the disrupted adoptions. Like, I would not have Stella and Ollie if it wasn't for my friends and family. And even people that I didn't know supported us. And so, that's why I say my village, because there were people from near and far that supported us. And I would not have my babies if it wasn't for those people. And so I'm so grateful and thankful. But that is often what I just encourage families, like, don't give up, because I wanted to give up multiple times. And, that's not always God's plan for us. And so you can recoup that money and God will provide for you to be able to adopt a baby.
How do you, when you are consulting with families who are concerned, what are the ways you counsel them on how to, I hate to use the term guard your heart. I mean, you always let an expectant mom or a baby into your heart, but what ways do you help people to prepare or protect themselves emotionally?
I would say sharing my story and in a lot shorter version, because what I just shared was very long, but sharing that with them. And that's why I think the Lord has allowed all that to happen to me, so that I can greater serve my families. And I tell them, if I can do it, you can do it too. And I often do share, though, that like now that I've been through that twice, I feel like if I ever saw something that I needed to share with my family, like out of the caution for them, I would do that. You know what I mean? Like if I saw something that I was like, I'm just a little unsure about this, or, if I see something, I would let them know that, as well as like the agency. If there was any red flag, the agency would let, us know, to let them know, like, we look out for our families. We don't ever want someone to walk through that, but it is the choice of a mom, whether she wants to parent or if she wants to give their child up for adoption. And then of course, if a family ever does experience a disruption, I do spend time with them on the phone. I do try to text them and check in on them, let them know I'm always available for them, send them words of encouragement. I also do send them things for grants and different things like that to try to help offset, because I know that's the first thing they start thinking about. It is, one, I don't have a baby, and 2, I lost all this money. And so I try to just encourage them to apply for grants and help them through that. And then also give them fundraising ideas just to help get them to be able to move on. But I try to be respectful of their time, because I tell them, like, you need to grieve. I needed to grieve. Like, people need to grieve that and process that. So, like, when you're ready to move on, you let me know, but I'm always going to be here for you. If you need a phone call or a text or anything, you pick up the phone and you call me, because I've been there. I can help you and guide you. And it's okay to grieve, because that was a life of a child that you thought you were going to bring into your home and you didn't. Like, you need to process that. And so I really just try to be there however they want me to be, and support them and guide them through the next steps.
Well, thank you so much, Bree, for joining us today and for joining your very heartfelt story, your disruptive adoptions, and then your 2 beautiful stories as well with your 2 babies that you have. So we are just going to close out in prayer. So, dear Heavenly Father, we are just so thankful for Bree and her willingness to share her entire adoption story. It is one of joy and hard emotional moments as well, but in the end, we see that you've worked through her family, and through each of those stories to make her stronger and a better mom, individual, and consultant. And we're just so thankful for her. And Father, we just pray that this episode, for anyone who's listening, would be one that would be of encouragement to them, that even in the hard moments, you are always working, and we are always learning in those moments what you have planned for us. And we might not know in that moment why we're going through it, but eventually you do show it to us. And it's more often than not to show us that you are a great, merciful God, and that your plans are far greater than ours. So thank you. And in Jesus' name, amen.
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 Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. You can find us on any major podcast platform and on Instagram, Adoption Side by Side, to listen to more episodes and follow along in our personal adoption journeys as they change.